the internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
This week on Farming Forward, we're coming to you from, whoa, look at that. We're coming to you from Riverdale in St. Catherine. And we'll be talking to that young entrepreneur you just saw. He was picking breadfruits, but I can tell you about the chickens that he's been caring for all these years. He'll be talking to us about real yard chickens. Farming Forward. We're brought to you by Nutrimix. Tell me, Nutrimix? The big feed. The big feed.
Hi, I am Candy Pang.
Watagwan.
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 Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Tonight on Lead Story, who holds the rebuild? Major General Anthony Anderson, former Chief of Defense Staff, former Commissioner of Police and current Ambassador to the United States from Jamaica, has been appointed CEO of the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA. The appointment has been welcomed by some business groups, but the opposition says it raises serious questions that must be answered openly and without delay. Also tonight, CVM Editor-at-Large Nika Lewis sits down with James Scriven, Chief Executive Officer of IDB Invest, during Sustainability Week in Barbados. What does private capital mobilization mean for Jamaica's reconstruction and future, and for the wider Caribbean? And later, who gets the house? Why do so many Jamaicans avoid writing wills? And how can estate planning save families years of pain, cost, and conflict? I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story. Retired Major General Anthony Anderson will assume duties as Chief Executive Officer of the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, known as NARA, on June 1. That's next Monday. The announcement was made by Prime Minister Andrew Holness in a special post-cabinet press briefing at Jamaica House yesterday. The stakes are high. The Planning Institute of Jamaica estimates that Melissa caused approximately US $12.2 billion in damage and losses, equivalent to more than half of Jamaica's gross domestic product, or GDP. Business groups have largely welcomed the appointment. The opposition, however, wants answers. How was the appointment made? Was there a process? And why was Anthony Anderson considered the best person for the job? But there's another question here. What kind of leadership does a country need after a national crisis? Joining me now to explore those are Dr. Gavin Myers, Principal Director of National Integrity Action, and Emil Leiber, President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. Good evening to you both, and thanks for joining us inside Lead Story.
Good evening. Thanks for
Hello, how are you?
Gentlemen, it's good to have you on.
How are you doing?
I'm good, Gavin.
Good to have you on with me, gentlemen. Let's start off first. Emil Leiber, then Dr. Myers. Emil Leiber, what was your immediate reaction and the immediate reaction of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce to the appointment of Major General Anthony Anderson as CEO of NARA?
So I would say it was positive because he does have a positive reputation in terms of the areas that he has worked in Jamaica before. He's somebody, I think, who is known to the Jamaican public. We were concerned that whoever is selected would have the sufficient organizational competence, because this body is supposed to engage in large-scale projects. And so when things operate at a certain level, you do have to have that capability to be able to assess and manage and so on. Now, as far as we're aware, isn't doing the actual projects, it's just engaging the third parties. But it is essential to have the systems in place and somebody who can understand the systems of management in place in order to do that. So I would say that we are cautiously optimistic.
Cautious optimism coming from the Liber from the JCC. Dr. Gavin Myers from National Integrity Action, what was your immediate reaction to the announcement of the appointment of Major General Anthony Anderson as CEO of NARA?
I think it's a good thing that we have NARA getting ready to hit the road now. We have been waiting for a while. But I'll just let one other note that it's interesting and important that we have someone in place. And, you know, like with, I just use an example. At NROC, if you have National Road Construction Authority, whatever I recall it, the CEO has to be an engineer. So that type of understanding of what it is that we're expecting with a leader for these organizations, something that is critical. You know, we need to have this type of certainty that these persons meet it. And we know that Major General Anderson meets the criteria. So it's good that we have this criteria, but it would have been great if we had known before what was the criteria that was being used. But outside of that, I welcome having Major General Anderson in, and that we start the work, because he has very big boots to fill, he has lots of work to do, and the rebuilding is impatient for getting done.
Emil Leiber, having heard now Dr. Myers' response and with yours earlier from a business confidence perspective, does this appointment signal stability, execution and capacity, given then the scale of the rebuilding required and some of the concerns that persons have with the challenge of the mass execution that is now being requested?
Well, let me put it this way. NARA cannot succeed from one man alone. So it will be essential to look at the team that Major General Anderson will build and will develop for NARA. So the leader, the CEO role is critical, but it is not the only role that is necessary for NARA to work. So I wouldn't go trumpeting, just yet. I would say it's a good start. It's a good start. You do have to have the right person at the top. But I think I said in an earlier forum that, as far as I'm aware, he does not have the construction sector-based experience. And a lot of what he will be engaging in is in relation to the construction sector. So I think it would be very important that he have very strong technical support in the form of engineers and so on, who can support him. So he would be at the, on top of it in terms of the broader organizational structure, but it is critical that the members of his team that he chooses to incorporate into NARA.
That team will be important, but we're also talking about somebody, Emil Leiber, who served as former Chief of Defense Staff of the Jamaica Defense Force, former Commissioner of Police. He's Jamaica's current ambassador to Washington, a position that, as far as we know at this moment, he still holds. And we haven't yet heard word about what happens on June 1. Even if he is a great person for this job, is this a position you believe that can be held simultaneously as he holds his ambassadorial duties, or is this something you expect an announcement in the coming days that he will be replaced?
No, it can't be held with his ambassadorial duties. That's a very different function and requires you to be in the United States. NARA cannot be run remotely. NARA cannot be run remotely. So there is no doubt in my mind that there will be an announcement shortly that he is stepping down as ambassador, Jamaica's ambassador to the United States of America, and in due course and at an appropriate time, an appropriate replacement selected. So this is a 100% job. This is not a job that you can do on the side, and it is billions and billions of taxpayer money and public money and public funds that are at stake. So this is a job that requires 110% commitment to the road.
This is not a work from home, not a, work from New York type of job.
So that's Dr. Gavin Myers. Well, in Washington, D.C. as ambassador, where he sits when he's doing that work.
So, from D.C.
Yes. So. Yeah. With him not having a work from DC talk, right? But with him not having a work from DC job as well, there had been concerns that had been raised about this entire appointment process, the role of certain people in the appointment process, and now the opposition has said they want clarity on that. Does that muddy this discussion any at all, Dr. Maz? Especially since you've said now we are going down the road, we actually now have this well-discussed body, whether it's controversial legislation, no matter what is going on, that we have this in place.
We have a legislation to work with. But what would have been great, Jamaica, we talk about it in a low trust environment. So if we're building a collaborative space, if we're trying to build resilience, we're building with people. But I think what would have been great is if beforehand we've been told what was the process that would have been used for the selection, and even more, what is the broad or general criterion being used. But that's the Prime Minister stated what has happened, and we hold him to his word, and this is what is happening. But what I would like to talk about going forward is the lessons that we are learning from this, in terms of ensuring that we have this type of probity, accountability up front, that people don't question you. You don't want to start off on a back foot. You don't want to start off where people think anything. But I am given the full confidence, and that we have work to do. And I'm saying that to say that because of the type of collaborative nature that is needed, Major Anderson will know, or ought to know, that he will have to come in such a way that people, the confidence that he's getting, has to come through a open leadership and a participatory communicative style. That has to be the first thing that he's thinking of.
Well, we look forward to seeing what happens after. We now have the announcement, and now we're watching to see what NARA does with its new CEO. Dr. Gavin Myers, Principal Director of National Integrity Action and President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, Emil Leiber, thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story.
My pleasure. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. We're going to take a break now and go to the government because they've been questioned about Major General Anthony Anderson's appointment. We'll hear from them next.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
This week on Farming Forward, we're coming to you from... Whoa! Look at that! Real... We're coming to you from Riverdale in St. Catherine, and we'll be talking to that young entrepreneur you just saw. He was picking breadfruits, but I can tell you about the chickens that he's been caring for all these years. He'll be talking to us about real yard chickens. Farming Forward. We're brought to you by Nutrimix. Tell me, Nutrimix? The big feed. The big feed.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Welcome back to Lead Story. The Prime Minister has described Major General Anthony Anderson's appointment as Chief Executive Officer of NARA as the right choice at the moment. He said Major General Anthony Anderson brings to NARA the discipline, integrity and operational command required for this moment. Those are the Prime Minister's words at Jamaica House on Wednesday. But tonight, there are questions from the opposition. And though we heard praise from some business groups, some of them have questions as well about the process that produced the appointment of Major General Anderson, as well as the architecture he will lead. So, joining me now inside Lead Story, we have Minister with Responsibility for Works, Robert Morgan. Mr. Morgan, welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you very much for having me. I must apologize for the background, but I'm actually at a meeting in my constituency.
Glad to have you. Glad that you're meeting with your constituents. Glad that you're also talking to us today on this. Now, we've had this broad discussion about Major General Anthony Anderson and his appointment. First, help us understand what made him the right man for the job.
Well, I think he has the qualifications that are necessary. I think he has the experience. I mean, Jamaica has invested a lot in Major Anderson based on his experience within the Army, stretching back to Cricket World Cup in 2007, which was in another administration, and all the investments that were made. It's good that Jamaicans of this caliber and this experience, somebody who has a degree in engineering, somebody who has been to Harvard, has decided to come back and serve in a capacity when Jamaica needs them the most. And I think that is a commendable thing. He doesn't have to do it. He has options internationally that he could have engaged. And I think the fact that he has come back to help us with the qualifications, dealing with a cohort of people, 100 and odd persons of international credibility and qualifications, is something that we should be proud of as Jamaicans.
The Prime Minister did announce that 85 applications were received for the position of Chief Executive Officer. 7 of them were shortlisted. But the Opposition People's National Party has a question asking, did Major General Anthony Anderson apply during the initial recruitment exercise?
Yes, he applied, and he applied within the deadline. You know, it is very sad that the opposition continues this approach of trying to diminish the persons who wish to serve. We saw it with the DPP, we saw it with Dennis Chung, where if somebody is not clearly on their side or clearly political, somebody who is middle of the road, then they try to diminish them. It is unfair. Major Anderson has
But is it, hold on, Robert Morgan, but this is a controversial piece of legislation that civil society groups and others had commented on. This appointment of the CEO was something that had been discussed, and now the appointment of Major General Anderson, someone who served as former Chief of Defence Staff of the Jamaica Defence Force, former Commissioner of Police, now serving as Ambassador. This is, as you said, a storied candidate, but one that person said perhaps was handpicked as opposed to part of that process, and they say they don't know what the criteria or the process looked like ahead of time to be able to have your confidence. Is it fair to say then that there's no question that can be asked by anyone, including the opposition, about this appointment?
I think anyone who is objective and anyone who understands how the public sector works, we did not, as politicians, have any engagement with the process to engage Major Anderson. As a matter of fact, there was an international call for applications. The head of the Public Service Commission and several other high-level public servants, which is the standard, as well as the Cabinet Secretary, engaged in a process to interview. The Prime Minister was not a part of it. I was not a part of it. If we're saying, as it is apparent that the opposition is trying to say, that the regular processes of interviewing and engagement with persons to get jobs is irrelevant, then what other criteria, what other objectives test that would they apply to engage persons? And I think that's the challenge I'm having with the debate. The debate is that if somebody throws an accusation out there without any other particulars, they have not raised it, they have not given any evidence that the process was flawed. They have not given any evidence that the individual was inappropriately engaged. But by raising questions, you yourself are now echoing those questions.
Not echoing, Minister, but merely asking, given then that we don't have a listing of what the applicants were, where it is, because the CEO...
He who alleges must prove.
And I am not alleging, Minister. I am merely asking for a response from you to what the opposition... Right. So given then that we have Major General Anderson in place now, he is sitting CEO. The Prime Minister says he starts next Monday. That's June 1. Right. However, Major General Anderson has at work. He's already now Jamaica's ambassador to the United States. Are we looking forward to then an announcement that given that he's only been in that position for about a year, 12 months, that a new ambassador will be appointed?
Yes, obviously. I mean, Major Anderson would have seen this position and applied for it, which means that he would not logically be the ambassador to the United States anymore. Let me ask a question, Ms. Quarry. Jamaica has invested a lot in Major Anderson. He was a member of the army, which means that public funds have been used to train him, to invest in him, to get him to where he is. Why should Jamaica not be happy that he has decided to come back after leaving the army to serve his country? That's the question I ask. There are so many persons who have decided that they do not want to stay in Jamaica. They want to go and engage with multinational corporations, earn big salaries, which is fine. That is their right and their opportunity. But when we have Jamaicans who have decided, listen, I want to come back. Jamaica is in a vulnerable position. Jamaica has just faced one of the most challenging hurricanes in the history, and I want to help. Isn't that the story? The story is a Jamaican deciding to give up what is a very powerful and important post as ambassador to the United States and say, I want to come back and help rebuild.
But he's serving in both positions, and as ambassador, Jamaica's ambassador to the United States.
He cannot serve in both.
So you're saying that we're to hear the announcement now of a new ambassador, but he serves both. When he's ambassador to the United States, he serves Jamaica. In this new role now as CEO of NARA, he serves Jamaica and has made a decision about where he would like to have that service. So good. And so where he would like to have that service. However, we're looking now at what persons are saying is an assembly of people, very high-ranking individuals, but many of them from the Army. Lieutenant General Rocky Meade, former Chief of Defense Staff of the Jamaica Defense Force, Ambassador. He is Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. Commander Alvin Gale, seconded from the Jamaica Defense Force. He leads the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, which now sits within the Office of the Prime Minister. And now Major General Anthony Anderson leads NARA. Now 3 serving or former military officers in 3 senior civilian authority roles, all within the orbit of the Prime Minister. Is that institutional design? What is it what we're looking for when we bring these people into this?
What is wrong with that? There are members of the police force who transition from the police force to serve in public bodies. There are about 20 ministries, a majority of which are not headed or associated with the army. We invest a lot in training our military and our police. We send them to do these logistic courses, we send them to do these engineering courses, these management courses. Should the country not benefit from their expertise and knowledge when they retire? What is wrong with men of integrity, strength, and dedication coming back to serve their country? And I find that very disturbing that people are suggesting that when somebody leaves the army, or let's say the police force, that we should discard them. What should we do with their talents?
I think it's so important that you've spoken about these people, because them having plans after retirement would be incredibly important. You've made it very clear. Jamaica invests quite a lot into these individuals. But some might hear you saying that there must be then a space for them. The concerns that have been raised are about militarization, that military command culture is based on receiving and executing orders, while civilian accountability culture is built on questioning, transparency, and independent oversight. When you pull these people in, especially into the office of the Prime Minister, how does the government reconcile those two cultures in institutions handling billions in public funds?
Well, the majority of persons who are associated with entities related to the office of the Prime Minister have nothing to do with the military. The Cabinet Secretary is not a member of the military. The head of the National Housing Trust is not a member of the military. The head of the Heart Trust, NSTA, is not a member of the military. The head of the Port Authority is not a member of the military. And if you look at the extension, MEGJC Permanent Secretary is not a head of the military, and the NWA head is not a head of the military, NRAC head is not a head of the military, UDC head is not a head of the military. The military is a part of the ecosystem of our society. Are we saying that once you are from the military, that you should not be qualified to enter into public service?
And that is not what we're saying, Minister, but where the UDC is likely to be displaced, where the UDC is likely to be displaced, where there are other bodies that because of NARA's sweeping powers are also likely to be displaced, where ODPEM as a preparedness body.
I don't know where you get that conversation from. I don't know who told you that. The NARA bill did not repeal any legislation.
Not to repeal, Minister, but there are overlaps that had been highlighted in the process.
But I'm saying to you, highlighted by who? NARA is a vehicle to execute specific projects in a quick manner. It does not undermine the regular procurement process. It does not undermine the regular approval process. It does not take away power from any entity. The government will determine XYZ projects that will be under NARA. The government will function as normal for everything else. So no agency will be destroyed or removed. NARA projects are specific projects. And that's the challenge I keep having with the discussion, where persons are trying to use NARA as a cloak to say that it's an undermining of government. The accountability mechanisms are there. Attorneys, Auditor General, Integrity Commission, the MOCA, FID, no one has undermined these entities. They still have the power to do what they want to do.
So they will be able to be operational, and that will be very important now for people as they continue to now watch it. Nobody said they can't be either. But Minister Morgan, as we close though, with a new CEO in place now for NARA, people are now anxious to see what happens next. What are we to expect in, let's say, the next 60 days at NARA, or are we still at that building out phase still?
So at 60 days, within 60 days, you will see significant movement in terms of engaging staff and building out the organizational chart of NARA. And at the time, you will see an announcement of the first 10 projects related to rebuilding facilities within the western side of the island.
Which date, Minister? You broke up a moment ago. At what date will we be hearing about the announcement of the projects?
The projects will be announced within the next week.
We look forward to that then, Minister. And I think that's so important for Jamaicans who in the western part of Jamaica, hard hit by Hurricane Melissa. We're waiting now to see the work of NARA. Minister with responsibility for works, Robert Morgan, thank you for taking time out from your constituents to join us.
Thank you for having me
inside Lead Story. All right, we'll take a break with you and come back because Editor-at-Large Nika Lewis talks to the International Development Bank next inside Lead Story.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Lucozade, bring the energy. Unbeatable taste, new look.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
as countries across the region look to build more resilient economies. One of the biggest questions is where the money for development will come from, and how will small states like Jamaica position themselves to benefit. At Sustainability Week in Barbados, our editor-at-large Nika Lewis spoke with James Scriven, CEO of IDB Invest, about business opportunities in the region, mobilizing capital for development, and what countries must do to attract investment. Let's take a look.
Thanks, Jody. Well, IDB Invest, the private sector arm of the Inter-American Development Bank Group, plays a pivotal role in mobilizing capital and fostering sustainable development across Latin America and the Caribbean. As we gather during Sustainability Week in Barbados, we're eager to explore how IDB Invest is shaping opportunities in the region. Joining me now is CEO of IDB Invest, Mr. James Scriven. Welcome, Mr. Scriven.
Very nice to meet you, and it's a real pleasure to be over here with you and your audience.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Scriven, let us talk about IDB Invest. What is it, its mandate and its role in supporting private sector development across the Caribbean?
IDB Invest is the private sector arm of the IDB Group. The IDB Group is a development institution focused on and fostering development in our 26 countries, of which Barbados and many countries in the Caribbean are members.
Understood. Do tell us a little more about how it works in terms of mobilizing capital, for example, for projects that drive inclusive growth in the region.
IDB Invest, the institution that I represent, brings in, mobilizes capital, its own capital and third-party capital to be able to invest in projects that have a pivotal role and a developmental role in a country. So we look at a sector, we invest in that sector to be able to create jobs, give access to electricity, access to financial services. So everything we do is which we're investing in.
Right. I lost you briefly just now. So if you could just double back on the last few things you shared about what you do and how you pull on capital.
So the way that we institution of development is the reason how we invest in to development or country. So what we do is invest our capital in projects that have a high developmental impact in a continent, in a country. In this case, for example, the example I was referring to is an example where you mobilize capital to be able to create jobs. You mobilize capital to be able to create a larger infrastructure projects, ports, airports. You create and invest in hospitals. You create and invest in access to electricity. So those are all the jobs that we do as a developmental institution.
Yes. Talk to me a little about the originate to share model. What is it and how does it work?
So we are, as a development institutions, having a number of credit officers, bankers on the ground in country, look at the opportunities to be able to invest. And what we do is bring those opportunities to the international capital markets. That's why we call the concept originate to share. That concept is we originate, we structure a deal, and we bring in and crowd in international capital markets to invest in that project. For example, over the last few years, we've done a number of projects. We do about 100 projects a year, but we have today partnerships with over 200 of global investors, and we bring in that capital into the region.
Understood. Now, during Sustainability Week in Barbados, what key themes or priorities will the IDB Invest be emphasizing in its regional agenda?
So Sustainability Week, it's all about business. We have conversations, we bring in partners, we bring in investors, we bring in clients. The whole objective of this event is bringing in and crowding in investors to look at the business opportunities that are happening in our region, in particular in the Caribbean, but more importantly in Barbados. So the conversations are centered around different themes, infrastructure and energy, the corporate sector, financial sector, but all harnessed around one objective, is connecting development assets to investors. It's all about business.
Amazing. I'd imagine you have quite a bit of stakeholders gathering now. Can you talk numbers?
Yes. Yeah, we have about 800 people that are physically over here in our meetings every day. It's a 3-day event. Those 800 people are coming from 46 different countries. So we represent not only people coming from Latin America and the Caribbean, but also coming from the US, from Canada, Europe, Asia, and a number of different countries around the world. So 46 countries are participating in this event.
Amazing. Let's also talk about your IDB Invest numbers, because in 2025 there were some major wins for the IDB Invest program. Let's talk about those.
Yes, last year was a record year for us. We did about $13 billion of business, of which $2 billion were done in the Caribbean. We do about 100 projects a year. So that has been an amazing and a very important growth story. So $13 billion was a record year for us to do investments in the continent.
And impact, I understand it, at the heart of what the IDB Invest does. Talk a little bit about your impact so far.
Yes, as a development institution, the numbers that we refer to are not only business, we refer to the impact. So every time we go to our board, every time we issue a press release about a partnership or deal that we do, or every time we publish our annual report, we mention the development impact of the work we do. So access to financial services, we lend to institutions to lend to MSMEs, small and medium-sized enterprise. We talk about how many ports we built. We talk about how many roads we built and how many kilometers. So everything we do targets indicators of development. And we've got a special tool that we call Delta, that is a development effectiveness tool that measures every work we do, access to beds when it comes to health and education, access to teachers. So all these indicators are particularly a focus of developmental impact that we do.
Well, you spoke about so much just now, but I do understand that there may be some advancements in green financing or climate smart investments in the Caribbean. Have you any interest in that, and what interest exactly? What does it look like?
So we do about 50 to 60% of our business annually in the climate space. When it comes to the Caribbean, there are two very big areas in which we work in. One, renewable energy. The benefits that the Caribbean has is access to solar, to sun, and access to wind. So a lot of the work that we do is working with companies to be able to generate their own energy with using solar panels and wind farms for them to be able to access cheaper energy and more reliable energy. So that's one area of climate. The other area has to do with adaptation.
Yes.
As you know, the Caribbean is unfortunately a very vulnerable sub-region in our continent, subject to acts of nature, hurricanes, droughts, and many acts that could affect businesses, could affect physical infrastructure. So a lot of the business that we do is making those physical structures more resilient to effects of climate.
Partnerships are therefore critical for scaling impact. How does the IDB Invest collaborate with governments and local businesses or even international investors to unlock those opportunities? My final question.
Yes, partnerships are critical to everything we do. So let me refer to those three actors that you referred to. One, governments. As you know, as a multilateral institution, the IDB Group does interact not only with the private sector, but very importantly with the public sector. And how we interact with the public sector is we work through the public sector IDB that works with governments to make the enabling environments for the private sector to invest in. So that's why when you think about the IDB Group, you only don't think about the private sector, but you also think about governments. Second, you talk about clients. We've got about 600 clients in the continent, where we work daily to be able to have an impact on the developments that I just referred to. So those are a critical area. The last point, investors. We don't only invest our money, we also invest with third-party investors. I mentioned about 200 investors that through us have invested in projects, but those partnerships go beyond normal impact investors. We've got a very close relationship with the Caribbean Development Bank, who was present over here. Today we signed a very important agreement in the trade finance program. So that's a great example of partnerships that we have across the region to be able to have a bigger impact.
Okay, if you could sum up that agreement you just mentioned in less than a minute, how good could you go?
So we have an agreement that we signed today with the Caribbean Development Bank to be able to foster trade finance in the Caribbean. So together with the Caribbean Development Bank and ourselves, we've got a program to be able to help SMEs, medium-sized enterprises, to be able to export within the continent and outside of the continent. And this trade facilitation program will allow them to do that.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze another one. Looking for the future, what can we expect from IDB Invest?
Growth and more impact. This was an amazing event. As you heard, this has a long-lasting impact. This is an event that we do every 2 years. We did it a few years back in Panama, then Miami. Last time, 2 years ago, we did it in Manaus, in the heart of the Amazon, and we felt it necessary to bring it to the Caribbean. The Caribbean is going through an enormous and significant transformation, and we wanted to bring investors to see this firsthand. So what we take away from this event is growth and impact. That's the strategy of the IDB Group, and in particular the IDB Invest. So expect from us bigger numbers and impactful projects.
Well, thank you so much for sharing not just impact but insights, Mr. James Scriven, CEO of IDB Invest. It's clear that the IDB Invest is not only mobilizing capital, sir, but also shaping a sustainable and resilient future for us in the Caribbean. Well, it's back to you, Jody.
Thank you so much, Nika. That was editor at large Nika Lewis during Sustainability Week in Barbados, speaking there with IDB Invest CEO James Scriven. The message remains clear. Capital may exist, but countries must create the conditions to attract it. Stability, execution, good governance, and policy certainty. Next, we're talking about wills. Do you have one? Are you prepared in the event of your death? And do you think writing a will might cause your death? We talk about that next.
Everybody want to see a country right now. One thing about Jamaicans, we might have differences, but we know when something is good for all of us. And when we work together against crime and violence, we are stronger than ever. And that's how we know the Citizen Security Plan can work. That one name CSP. The Citizen Security Plan is an initiative of the Ministry of National Security in partnership with the European Union. It's an all-of-government effort to create safer streets and build stronger communities. Go to mns.gov.jm to learn how you can play your part.
We end tonight with a conversation many Jamaicans prefer to avoid: wills and estate planning. For many people, there's still a belief that writing a will somehow invites death. Others think it's too expensive or only necessary for wealthy people. And you certainly don't think of yourself in that category. But the reality is that failing to plan can leave families fighting over property for years, locking up assets, straining relationships, and costing money. Joining us now to help figure this out and to do better is attorney at law Mikhail H.R. Williams. Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us, Mikhail.
Thank you so much for having me, Jody. It's great to be here. A very topical issue and a very serious one, but it's something that needs to be discussed, and happy to be here to be a part of the discussion.
Especially after Hurricane Melissa, so many people started asking questions about wills and estate planning. So let's first find out why we don't have any. Why do so many Jamaicans, Mikhail, still avoid writing wills?
Well, as you said, one of the main issues is a lot of people think that when you write will, you're thinking about debt, you're calling down debt on yourselves. And I think that's one aspect of it, but I think a greater part about it is people think wills are too complicated. You have to have a whole lot of assets, you have to have companies, shares in companies, and something complex, when in fact that's not the case. A will can simply indicate your funeral arrangements. It can indicate who is to take care of your children if they are underage, and it can indicate a number of things other than this is my particular property and this is how I'm giving it to somebody else. It can do so many things, and more Jamaicans need to understand that it doesn't need to be complex. Your assets don't have to be large. You can create a will for virtually anything.
Many people, though, don't want to write wills for some of the reasons that you've stated. It looks very complicated. But what does that leave, what position does that leave your family in? Because when you die without a will, walk us through that legal process, what it costs, especially the family, in time, money, and conflict. Dead left is a real and legitimate part of Jamaican life. The idea that those who are left behind now are often in protracted battles over property.
Right. So let me start first by saying what is one of the greatest benefits of a will. The moment that you die and you have a written will, your executors, the persons who you want to handle your estate, all that you've had, they can immediately start to act. So you don't have to wait on a court order. You don't have to wait on formalities taking place. Once a will is in existence and it's validly executed, that person can start acting immediately on your death. So that makes the process easier. They can take care of your assets, they can do what is necessary to make sure business continues as usual. So that's the first thing. It ensures a smooth transition for your estate and for your loved ones, the persons who are to benefit under your estate. When you don't have that, the problem is you must hurriedly go to the court to get a document authorizing you to do what we call an administration of the estate. Administration of the estate does not apply the same way that a will does, because the person who is in charge has to go through a formal court process, and it might take months to years if there are complications. So one of the easiest things and the most attractive things about having a will is how quickly things can kick into gear and your assets can be protected, your beneficiaries can be protected, and things can continue. And of course, having an administrator going to the court means you're going to have an attorney, you're going to have an accountant, you're going to have professionals, and that costs a lot more money.
For some people listening to you right now, though, their mindset is, I'll be dead. Those who are after me will sort it out. But there are conflicts now that are generational, that have occurred because people have been waiting for this, had been promised this. It had not been left in a will or in any document that they'd be able to access. What's the emotional concern of people who come to you and now need to go through this process of administration that they share with you? Is it that the people who died didn't want to make a decision and therefore left them in this mess? What is it?
Sometimes. I've had, in my personal experience as an attorney, I've had two extremes. I've had situations where you've had a family, a father, for example, having some children that he favored, some who he didn't, and he made provision making clear that he favored this child over that child for whatever reason. Then there are the other extremes where parents do feel that certain children, because of what kind of relationship they've had with the parents, are entitled to a little bit more than another child. And because they don't want to put that in writing because it feels like it's going to damage those relationships, they decide not to put it in writing. But what happens is those children in your death are the ones who said, but I contributed more, I did more, I assisted more, therefore I should get more. And that kind of conflict happens a lot, and you end up creating rifts in family in your death. So my personal opinion is, it might be a difficult pill to swallow if you are minded not to divide your assets equally amongst beneficiaries. But in the absence of that will, the conflict might even be greater. And the conflict might result in court cases that drag on, and it's probably better to have that conflict resolved in your will than outside of your control. Because if you do love your family members, it is best to put it in writing, and it is best for the avoidance of that court case that might follow years and years after your death.
Somebody watching right now says, I don't have a will. The lawyer tells me that I need one. It might get complicated. What are 3 big things you say to them right now if they don't have a will in place and they have nothing that divides their assets after their death?
Well, to be honest, a will is probably one of the first things that every law student learns to draft. I think it's an assignment at the law school for you to draft a will. So all attorneys who have passed through the Norman Manley Law Schools or the regional law schools know how to draft a will. And it does not have to be complicated. If you have assets now, you can simply indicate who those assets are to go to, and you can include a clause, we call it a residuary clause, where you say any assets that I attain any future assets rather, they go to my children in equal share. They go to my relative, my spouse, my whatever, in whatever share. So it can resolve that issue. It can be very, very simple, and it really doesn't need to be complicated. The most important thing that you need to do, though, is disclose to your counsel, your attorney, your drafter, all of the assets that you have currently and how you wish to distribute them. And once that is done, very simple language is all that is needed.
What happens if I had a will but I got married?
Very good question. If you had a will before you got married, under our Wills Act, your marriage once done means that will is no longer valid. And the reason for that is a public policy kind of consideration. Once you have that drastic change in circumstance, becoming married means that you're now a union of 2 persons, and children and other things and other obligations are involved. The Wills Act says you need to draft a new will. You need to ensure that this new arrangement is considered going forward. And that's something that every person who intends to get married and has already created a will needs to consider going forward.
So what I hear for you as the big thing is get a lawyer, write a will, stop wasting time, because everybody after you will have to get a lawyer and an accountant and go to the court in order to get a much more complicated story out of all of this. Well, we're going to have to help people figure out how this will process works. Maybe they can't get a lawyer. Is there something they can do at home? All of those are questions that now people have on their mind. Mikhail, we're out of time though completely to have that conversation today. But we spoke about pensions a few weeks ago. We wanted to make sure that people better understood what end-of-life planning looked like. Mikhail H.R. Williams, attorney at law, thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story. All right, that's a big show there. Lots to swallow. But I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and on behalf of the entire CVM production team, thank you for watching Lead Story. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe. Up next, CVM News.